A very good morning, class 9 students. I welcome you all on this online platform provided by Jagriti Classes. Today we are continuing with our chapter 14th of class 9th, Natural Resources. So in the previous video lecture we have started the chapter, that is I have given you the introduction about this chapter. So this video lecture is for class 9 students and we are doing chapter 14th of class 9, that is a chapter of biology here, okay? So we discussed in the previous video class that what do you mean by the term natural resources. So natural resources is anything, any useful substance or any useful matter which is obtained from nature itself. So such type of resources which are obtained directly from the nature, these are called natural resources. Then I also classified resources into two different kinds. That is, one is your natural resources, but the other one could be synthetic, man-made or artificial resources. All the words mean one and the same thing. So the resources, the useful substances which are not directly taken from the nature, okay, but raw materials for these resources, they are taken from the nature and then they are being processed to make it into a resource. Resource means any useful thing. So further we discussed what do you mean by air, atmosphere, what is the functions of atmosphere, the composition and its pollution. So today likewise we'll be discussing with the new topic which is water here. Before this, in the previous video class, we have discussed biosphere. Biosphere is the zone where lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere, they interact together. And then we classified biosphere into two categories, that is biosphere can have two kinds of components in it. One component may be the abiotic component and the next one would be biotic component. So abiotic means non-living things. And what are the non-living things in biosphere? The non-living things in biosphere are air, water, soil, land, etc. And under the biotic components, we studied different kinds of organisms, living organisms, which are plants, animals, bacteria, microbes, you can say fungus, etc. So these are the two components of biosphere, the biotic component and the abiotic component. So now we are starting with water. I told you all these topics which we have discussed in the previous video class, and today we are beginning the class with water. So what is water? You all know it is the fluid, it is called as the universal solvent. Okay, so first is why water, or we can write water is known as universal solvent. So why water is called universal solvent? In chemistry you have dealt with the word solvent. Solvent is a medium which can dissolve any component in it, okay? So that medium is called as solvent here. Solvent is that medium which is capable of dissolving substances within it or substances inside it. And the substance which get dissolved, they were known as solute. Good. So water is universal solvent. Universal means water has the capacity to dissolve approximately everything inside it. So it is termed as a universal solvent. While defining universal solvent, the medium or the solvent which has the capacity to dissolve everything in it, okay? So such solvent are called universal solvent. Now water is the universal solvent which you have. Then now we'll not be discussing what are the basic uses of water, okay? Because you all can write hundreds of points on uses of water. It is used for domestic purposes, it is used for washing clothes, it is used for the daily life activities, it is used for drinking. All these basic uses you can include in the point whenever you are asked about uses of water. But here we'll be dealing the uses of water, some of the important or main uses. So the first important use of water which we'll be studying here would be the first use of water. So water, it is useful to transport, this water medium, it is useful to transport all the substances present inside the body, substances inside our body from one part to the other part. Okay, so this is the use of water. Water is useful to transport all the cellular substances, that is all the metabolic cellular substance which you have inside your body or inside your cell. These substances can be transported from one part to the other location in the body through water. If the body didn't had a fluid medium, then this transport of substance would become a very difficult process. So the important term here is it is used for transport of materials within the body from one place to the other place. The next use of water, if I talk about the second use, then we know that any organism if we deal with, so I'm writing here human. So we know that human body is made up of 70 to 85% of water. Human body is made up of 70 to 75% water. That is, inside the human body you have a fluid medium present everywhere, and in this fluid medium all the biochemical reactions, all the cellular reactions which occur inside your body, they require a fluid medium, and that requirement of fluid medium is provided by water content. So human body is made up of 70 to 75% water, and this fluid, or we can say this provides a fluid medium, this provides a fluid medium for all cellular reactions, or you can either call them to be metabolic reactions to occur. Okay, so this is again a very important use of water. So these are the two uses of water which are given in your textbooks, you should know, and then rest of the uses you can write on your own. They are very simple. And universal solvent, you can be asked why water is called universal solvent, because it is capable of dissolving every kind of solute inside it. So now we are moving on to the next. Okay, wait a minute. So we have done water. We have done that water is a universal solvent. And then the next important thing which we discussed were the uses of water. So now we will be moving to the next topic which is given in your books. Actually it is given previously. Okay, before air pollution you are being given the topic of rains. So now our topic of discussion would be rains. So why rains come? These rains, or you can say the monsoon season, it is the precipitation or the falling of water from the sky. Now in this you have to learn the concept or a question. If you read your books, then you are being provided with a question here, that is, how are clouds formed? So actually you have to read this topic inside the topic rains. How are clouds formed? This also I know you have done in your junior classes. You have read about the hydrological cycle which is commonly known as water cycle. Okay, so clouds are formed as a result of water cycle. So we'll be discussing it in that form of flow chart. So let's begin. For the formation of clouds, what you have is, you have a water source. This water source might be a lake or a sea or a river, etc. Okay, so you can have a water source. On this water source, when the sun shines brightly, due to the heat of the sun, the surface water of this water body, it gets evaporated. So now due to the heat provided by the sun, evaporation of surface water occurs. Evaporation of surface water. And due to this evaporation, now the water which was in liquid state, it gets converted. So the important here is evaporation, and now the conversion of liquid state water to its gaseous form. So gaseous form of water, which is known as water vapors. So now the water vapors are formed, and these water vapors, they move up, they rise up from the water body, and then whenever they rise up, okay, so the water vapors, because they are very light, so and have a higher temperature, these water vapor rise up, and as a result, when the water vapors would rise up, when they reach at a particular height, then there at the above level you have above there is low temperature compared to the temperature which was present near the water source or near the ground. So as a result, when they rise up above, then there is very low temperature which is present, and due to low temperature, these water vapor, they again condense to form the droplets of water. So now what this process which I told you is known as condensation. So higher up in the sky, condensation occurs, due to which you again get droplets of water, and these droplets of water, they condense together, they combine together, and hence you have the formation of clouds. Okay, clouds which contain water droplets. And these clouds which are formed, then they provide us with the rains, and we call it to be precipitation. So this precipitation, it can be in the form of rains which we experience in Rajasthan, okay? We experience rains, but this precipitation, it can have many other forms. That is, the precipitation which occurs, this can either be in the form of rain, or it can be hail, or it can be in the form of snow. So these are different kinds of precipitation which can occur. Precipitation is the falling of water from the sky, and according to the state, the physical state in which the water is falling, like if it is in solid form, then we call it snow, and if it is in liquid form, then you call it to be rain. Okay, so clouds do the process of precipitation, and precipitation can have various forms. So this is the flow chart which gives you the answer to the question, how are clouds formed? Okay, I hope this is clear. This is much similar to the water cycle which you have read in your junior classes. If you remember the diagrams which you made, that the water is getting evaporated, now the water droplets are condensing to form the clouds, and after the formation of clouds, rains occur. So this completes the topic, that is how are clouds formed. Now after this, we have to do what are a wonder liquid we have done, that is what are the importance of water. Now we will be doing that, what are the effects of water, or we can call it why we are dependent on water. So you know all organisms are dependent on water. So the first reason, water is very important. Water is a source of providing fluid medium inside the body for various reactions to take place, to help various biochemical reactions to occur inside the body. Next is what? Water is very important because you can say that the rainfall pattern or the rainfall amount, it decides, this rainfall amount, it decides the type and number of organisms which would be present in an area. Yes, this rainfall pattern is very much important in deciding the nature and type of biodiversity which you will be having in a particular given area. Let's suppose if there is very mere rainfall, or a region has shortage of rainfall. Accordingly, there would be the physical features, that is, a region having very less rainfall, it would be similar to a desert kind of thing, or it would have very less forest, okay? Or there would be scarce forest present. Whereas compared to a region of high rainfall, towards the equator, if we study different zones of the earth, that is the tropical and the subtropical, then you have polar regions. So near the equator, the tropical zones, their tropical rainforests are present. This all you have done in your geography books. So tropical rainforest means which are perennial, they contain evergreen plants, and they are highly dependent on the rains. So the regions having high rainfall, they have very dense forest, presence of very dense forest cover. And also now we have talked about, like we are talking that amount of rainfall decides the amount of forest, that is the flora of any region. Flora is the plant cover of any region. So more is the rainfall, yes, the forest would be less or more accordingly, but one more thing is there, that dense forest means you will have large number of trees or plants there, and with this large dense forest means we are saying that large number of plants would be present, and here the number of plants would be high, and with this the type of plants which are found there would also be very high. So with the number of plants, the type of plants which are formed, type of plants are also more. Type of plants means the biodiversity which is being found in the plants. Whereas the area of short rainfall, it would have less number and less diversity of the plants. So this would have less number and less diversity of the plants. And in turn, when you have less number and less diversity of the plants, similarly this rainfall pattern or the presence of rainfall or water in a particular area, it affects the diversity of animals, of different organisms. So you can include one more point, that less number and less diversity of plants would be found, as well as less number and less diversity of animals would also be present here. Whereas comparing to the area having higher rainfall, you would have, as you will have large number and large type of plants, similarly this is applicable for animals. That is, the complete biodiversity including plants and animals would be higher when we are dealing with an area of high rainfall. And if an area lacks rainfall or there is very shortage of rainfall, then you will have less plants, less type of plants, as well as less type of animals and less number of animals also. So I hope this is clear. And then you are also given one point in the book, that in India, which kind of winds are responsible for bringing in the monsoons or for bringing in the rains. So its answer you have been given. It is written, a satellite picture is shown in your NCERT books on page number 192. And it is written that in India, rains are brought by the southwest or the northeast monsoons. So this you have to remember, that in India, the rains are brought by the southeast monsoons, okay? These monsoon winds are responsible for bringing rain in our country. And in detail, you will be reading in your geography textbooks about this in the chapter Climate itself. So now when we have completed with water, and then we have done its uses, so now we will be doing water pollution. So what causes water pollution, or how can we define the term water pollution? So water pollution, as we discussed air pollution, similarly you have the pollution of water. So in a statement, if I tell you to define what do you understand by this term, then it is the presence of unwanted or undesirable impurities in the water leads to water pollution. So water pollution can be defined as it is the addition of undesirable substances in the water leading to degradation in its physical and chemical properties. Okay, so this is the way in which you can define water pollution. Water pollution is the addition or mixing of undesirable or unwanted substances in the water leading to degradation in its, and due to this mixing, due to this pollution, the physical and chemical properties of the water would change. Physical properties means its appearance. It might not appear clean now, it would appear very misty or foggy, okay? That is, it would not be completely transparent now, or in physical properties you can say its taste, its smell, its color all would change. And chemical properties means the addition of certain unwanted chemical substances in the water, due to which its chemical properties, the clear water or unpolluted water only contains H2O molecules, that is water molecules. But when we are talking about water pollution, so okay, let's say how water pollution occur. If we see the agents which are responsible for water pollution. So what are the agents? The first one is excess addition of chemical pesticides and fertilizers in the fields, on the crop plants. Whenever rainfall comes or after irrigation, what happens is these excess of chemicals, they are washed away and they mix with the water of water bodies. They come in the nearby water bodies. As a result, the chemical properties of the water would change, because now the external chemicals, that is your pesticides and fertilizers, are being mixed in the nearby water sources, and now it is changing the chemical composition of the water, or you can say the chemical properties are changing. So the agents responsible for pollution, first is the washing away of fertilizers and pesticides from the crop plants, from the crops into the water bodies, and this makes the water polluted. The next is industries and factories, they use water for cooling their instruments and devices, and once they use the water as a coolant, then they discharge that used heated up water again into the water bodies, and as a result of this, what happens? The temperature of the water is highly affected, and because the temperature is affected, the marine life which is present, the aquatic organisms which are present in that water bodies, they would be affected, because not all organisms can survive at high temperature. Every organism can only survive a moderate range of temperature, but when the factories discharge the hot water which they used as a coolant directly into the water bodies, then due to the sudden increase in temperature of water bodies, the aquatic life is highly affected. So it would be the next agent for water pollution, that is the hot water discharged by industries and factories which use the water as a coolant So after they use the water, they discharge the high temperature water, that is the hot water, directly into the nearby water streams. The hot water discharged by industries and factories which use the water as a coolant back into the water bodies. Due to this discharge, what happens? The temperature of the water body is suddenly increased due to which aquatic life present in the water bodies or the aquatic organisms are highly affected now. So this would be the second agent which is responsible for water pollution, because as I told you, you are not mixing anything with the water. Its physical and chemical properties is not changing, but here the temperature of water is being changed. And once the temperature changes, because due to this sudden increase or sudden decrease in the temperature, what happens is the aquatic life, it cannot tolerate extremely high or extremely low temperature. They can only survive in a given particular range of temperature, and due to this sudden increase of temperature of water, some of the organism or most of the organisms are very adversely affected. They may die also. Okay, so this is again an agent for water pollution. The third agent for water pollution which we can write is what? Dams. Now you will say how dams are affecting or polluting the water, because whenever we use the advantages, then dams are very important to us. But yes, these dams are also contributing to water pollution. Let's see how. The dams which are built, they contain relatively colder water, because the water which is being stored in the dams, it has a relatively lesser, or it is comparatively less in temperature, which means it is comparatively colder compared to the water which is present outside the dam. So these dams, they contain relatively colder water compared to the outer water body, as the external or the outer water body which is present in the environment, it is having or it is receiving the sun's heat. Okay, so it is having a higher temperature compared to the water which is being stored in the dams, or you can even say here dams or the underground water which is even stored. Okay, the temperature of both these waters are different. So we have written they contain relatively colder water compared to the outer water body, as the external water source is in direct contact with the sun rays or with the sunlight, and hence this sunlight heats up that water. And when the water is released from them, so when water is released from the dams, what happens is the same thing, that is sudden increase takes place in the temperature of water, and due to this sudden increase, aquatic life cannot survive, or aquatic life is affected adversely. So this is the harmful effect of dams. I hope this is clear. So these are some of the agents we discussed. There are many more agents which you can write, okay? So these are some of the agents which are responsible for causing water pollution. Now you can also write many other agents, and then you have 3 points which are given in your books on page number 194 under the heading of water pollution. There it has been written that how can you define water pollution. So you can have different ways to define water pollution. So we'll be just writing in short, and you can find the exact answers in your CBSE books. The first point here which is written, the addition of undesirable substance to water bodies in the form of fertilizers and pesticides from the nearby farms or paper industries, they are now disease causing organisms could be grown, and now this would cause many disease. So the first point or the first way to define water pollution is the same as we did, that water pollution occurs when there is addition of undesirable substance from the nearby sources, and these sources may be the agriculture farms or they may be the industries, and due to this we have already discussed. Okay, there is one more point. If the addition of undesirable substance from farms, that is due to the addition of fertilizers and pesticides, what occurs is, due to the addition of these mineral rich, chemical rich substances in the water, there is rapid growth of algae on water surface. And due to this rapid growth of algae on the surface of water, why this algae has grown? Because the fertilizers and pesticides, they are mixed with water. And these fertilizers, what are its functions? The fertilizer enhance the growth of plants. And due to the mixing of fertilizers in water, you have the growth of algae on the surface of water. And this rapid growth of algae on the surface, like you have a river here or a pond here, okay, it is filled with water. Now what happens is, on the surface of water, okay, on the surface of water you have a rapid growth of algae here, and due to this rapid growth of algae, this algae covers the surface of water whole or in a complete manner. This is the growth of algae, and they spread very fast and they completely cover the whole surface of water here, due to which this rapid growth is also called as algal bloom. And now what are the disadvantages of forming an algal bloom? This algal bloom, what it does is, it cuts the oxygen supply, the oxygen which was coming from the environment or from the nearby atmosphere, and this oxygen which is being dissolved in water so that the fishes can use it. Now it cuts the supply of this oxygen. Now this oxygen cannot enter the water body, and then there would be a lack of oxygen in the water. And as you know, if the dissolved oxygen in the water would get decreased, because the oxygen available would be used by fishes and other aquatic organisms, and this algal bloom is not allowing, or it is preventing the other oxygen to get dissolved in water. So what happens when the dissolved oxygen present in water, it gets used up, there becomes a scarcity of oxygen, that is a lack of oxygen in water occurs, and due to this the aquatic life, it is very harmfully affected, and this aquatic life cannot survive, and the fishes and all other organisms would frequently die. So the aquatic life would be dying. So this is again a very very important water polluting agent, that is the mixing of fertilizers. Now you see it creates such a disastrous problem here. So the next type which is being given is the removal of desirable substance. Water pollution we define as the addition of desirable substance. So the next point which we can use is, if we add undesirable substance or if you remove the useful or desirable substance from the water, this too leads to water pollution. So the second point here which is even given in the books is removal of desirable, that is useful substances from water. So this again creates a problem, and this creates water pollution. Okay, you are being given examples. Then the third is a change in temperature, which I already told you. The third one is, if the temperature of water body changes, then also water pollution is caused. So a change in temperature is also attributed as a cause of water pollution. So these are the three different ways in which you can define water pollution. Now next you are being given some of the questions, in-text questions which you can do, and now we are moving on to the mineral riches in soil. So before this you have to know what do you mean by the term soil. Okay, soil, you all know there are many different kinds of soil. So first question is, how is the soil formed? So we can write formation of soil. So these are some of the important topics which we'll be discussing in this heading, soil. So how does the soil form? Let's make a flow chart as we usually do. You know that Earth's crust is present. Earth's crust is what? It is the hardest part. The hard part of the earth is called as crust. And what happens is, this earth crust, it gets broken down. This gets broken down by various agents which we'll be discussing, broken down into smaller and smaller particles, and the agents which are responsible for breaking the earth crust into smaller and smaller particles, you can say by sunlight, by wind, by water, then you have by organisms. Different organisms are also responsible, both plants and animals, okay? And in organisms we'll be studying one important organism which is lichens here. So breaking of earth crust into smaller and smaller particles by various agents like sun, wind, water, organisms, and at last you have the formation of soil. When the earth crust comprises of very large rocks. When these rocks get separated from each other, and then due to the action of sun, wind, water and organisms on these rocks, they get grinded to fine and fine particles, and these very fine particles of the large rocks or of the crust is called as soil. So this is the way how the soil is formed. Now in the next class we'll be discussing the ways how all these affect, okay? So we'll be discussing in points. It is given in your books. You can go through it, you can read them. Very easy, okay? How the sun helps, like for example, if we are discussing, you have a very large rock here. So what happens is, when the sun shines on the rock, this sun, it heats up the rock gets heated up during the daytime, and during the night when the temperature reduces, so the rock cools up. And during this, due to the heating and cooling of the rock continuously, when it is heated up it would expand, and then on cooling it contracts. And due to the continuous expansion and contraction in size of these rocks, what happens is the rock develops cracks inside it. Cracks are developed in the rocks, and due to the development of cracks in the rocks, the breaking of rock occurs, and when these rocks, large rocks, they get broken down into very fine particles, then the formation of soil is seen. So this is the effect of sun, that is how the sun is responsible for creation of soil. And likewise we'll be discussing all these three factors, that is living organisms, wind and water. So that's all for today's class. I hope you enjoyed this class and you understood all the concepts which we discussed, because these are very simple topics which are being given in the chapter. Okay, just one reading and you will be having clear definitions of all the concepts in your mind, and very basic questions are being asked from the chapter itself. So thank you for joining today's class. I hope you understood each and every concept of the class, and stay home, stay safe, keep following us. Thank you.